It is difficult to imagine two men who could be more different than Abraham Lincoln and George B. McClellan. In all probability, Jeff Davis had more in common with the president than did his general. The tall, lean president towered over the much shorter and stouter commander. McClellan, the product of a wealthy, well-connected Philadelphia family, experienced an uninterrupted and meteoric rise to prominence. Lincoln, who once qualified the scant nature of his biographical sketch by stating, "There is not much of it, for the reason, I suppose, that there is not much of me," experienced, considering its starting point, an even more impressive climb. But unlike McClellan, the president suffered personal setbacks and serious loss along the way. McClellan's egotism and arrogance are generally conceded by prominent historians, while Lincoln's humility and empathy are his hallmarks. The one thing they shared, at least until the summer of 1862, was a similar conception of the limits within which the war ought to be waged. Both men conceived of the conflict as a struggle to subdue an element of Southern society that, for the present, had deceived their naturally honest and law-abiding neighbors. Throughout 1861 and halfway through 1862, both believed it was their duty to restore the Union, keeping the issue of slavery as a purely subordinate question. While campaigning in Western Virginia, McClellan issued a proclamation concerning slavery, slave property, and the prospect of a slave rebellion, which strayed dangerously into the realm of political policy. The Lincoln administration raised no objection. After nearly a year and a half of an increasingly costly struggle, the president had decided to move his administration's policy in a different direction. When the president visited McClellan's army at Harrison's Landing on the peninsula, the general shared his thoughts on what he believed would be the proper military and political policy for the conduct of future operations. In essence, there should be no change in the methods and objectives employed by the government, and the aggressive demands of the radicals in Congress ought to be resisted. While Lincoln may not have been ready to embrace the remorseless revolutionary struggle, he had become disenthralled with McClellan's conception of a civilized and limited war. Throughout their relationship, the president treated his commander with kindness, patience, and forbearance. McClellan was a charming and charismatic individual, and Lincoln genuinely liked McClellan the man. For McClellan's part, he was more ambivalent about the president. On several occasions, McClellan acknowledged Lincoln's support, and late in his tenure described the president as his only friend in Washington. More often, Lincoln's kindness was met with irritation, insolence, and contempt. The haughtiness of Philadelphia had left an indelible mark on the young Napoleon. Regardless of the chain of command, a man such as Lincoln could never be McClellan's moral, intellectual, or social equal. Possibly the best example of the pettiness of one and the greatness of the other can be found in John Hay's November 13, 1862 journal entry. Lincoln's assistant secretary, John Hay, recounted the infamous incident as a portend of evil to come. On that evening, Hay, the president, and Secretary Seward paid a call on General McClellan at his private residence. The general had been attending a wedding and was expected shortly. After about an hour's wait, McClellan returned home and, according to Hay's account, was informed, without paying any particular attention to the porter, that the president was waiting. In a stunning display of temerity, the young Napoleon proceeded directly to bed. The phlegmatic president took what Hay would describe as the insolence of epaulets in stride, noting that it was better at this time not to be making points of etiquette and personal dignity.